All right, what is up, everybody? We are back for another weekly Wednesday live Q&A. I'm doing something a little bit different this week. I'm actually streaming live both on Facebook and on Instagram. Whew. Hopefully, both of them work fantastically well. We'll see what happens. But the topic of the week is flexible dieting versus strict meal plans. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week. Flexible dieting, pros and cons, meal plans, pros and cons. And as always, we do have people submit their questions, comments in general. So we're going to go right to it. For those people tuning in on Instagram, the comments are very small, so I don't know if I'll necessarily be able to read them. What's up, Ben? I see you, pal. But let's get right to it, guys. Blaine let us off strong today. And he said, touch on how flexible dieting and clean eating / meal plans can be the same thing when used correctly. Discuss how one is far more accurate than the other and why it makes more sense, especially in a caloric deficit, to make small adjustments that can make a huge difference. So Blaine, great question to start us off. Let's touch on that a little bit, guys. What is going on with flexible dieting and meal plans is overall the goal is to create a caloric deficit. Obviously, that's the number one goal, right? Is to put us in a deficit in order for us to lose weight. You know, that is the main idea. Choosing the foods that you eat is really going to be up to the individual, right? So what Blaine is getting at, he's just saying like, which one can be more accurate than the other? Now, I feel, in my opinion, that the flexible dieting method would be a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit more accurate because it's down to the exact gram. When you're measuring out, and typically when you're measuring out things like in a diet plan, it's going to be like a cup of rice. Well, if you've ever measured out a cup of rice, it can vary from time to time, right? So you have to make sure you're being as precise as you possibly can. So what Blaine was saying, and what I've kind of talked about in the past, is that when you make changes to your diet, they should be really incremental, ideally, right? Because, like for instance, I made a kind of a larger change to my diet the other day. I made about a 20-gram cut, and 20 grams made my weight plummet. Like I lost like 2 pounds in a week off of 20 grams of carbs, and that was crazy. It's hard to be as precise as possible when you're doing a diet plan. Now, I know that some people, will swear that when they measure out, their cup of rice or whatever, that it's exact. And I guess, it's one way of being, just being consistent, because consistency is key in no matter what diet you're doing. But we're going to kind of get into a little bit of the reasons behind it and why I feel like flexible dieting is a little bit superior than the other. But we'll get there. Blaine also goes on to say, and this may be something, and maybe you guys can help me out, because I haven't necessarily seen this, but that flexible dieting is almost like looked down upon in the NPC organizations, IFBB, NPC, and in other organizations like the natural organizations that I compete in, flexible dieting is more mainstream. Now, I guess I haven't seen that, but what Blaine said is that when he's been at shows, people will be like, "Oh, well, you follow flexible dieting at like an NPC show." They're like, "Well, you're not going to do good." And Ben said, "Chicken on both socials beat me." Yeah, I see you, Ben. I see you. That's why I'm live streaming. First time live streaming on both Instagram and Facebook. Check me out, 21st century. Now, Blaine goes on to say, actually, that was the end of Blaine's comment. So, all right, Tommy asks, when doing either one of these, how important is nutrient timing around training? So, no matter what, I mean, if you're going to be doing nutrient timing, which I do roughly for my clients, I feel like everybody pretty much does a larger carb meal, before and after training. I'm pretty sure everybody has that down. It's just a matter of how large is it going to be. And Courtney said, so fancy. Yeah, I appreciate that, Courtney. So Nutrient timing, I feel like across the board, is pretty much understood in no matter what diet plan you're doing. At least that's my personal opinion. Some people don't really like to space out their food accordingly, especially in their pre and what's up, Carl? Their pre and post workout meals. But I definitely like to space out my food accordingly. Now, Marie went on to say, I feel like flexible dieting can actually form into a structured meal plan in a way. And I'm glad that she said that because she says asking clients what foods they prefer and getting them basically to eat those foods in a flexible way. So what Marie's getting at is when she starts with somebody, she basically goes, she tries to ease them into flexible dieting. So what she does, and what I've done before, is I'll ask somebody, okay, what do you like to eat? And then they'll tell me, and I'll say, okay, these are how you can eat those foods in order to hit your macronutrients. Now, as the weeks go on, I do expect people to be able to fit different foods in. But that's a great starting off point because it gets them on a set meal plan, but it also helps them begin tracking their macronutrients. So that's a really good point. Now, another great point that was made, Julie had a lot, and let's see what she had to say. She said, what do you do if you're on a meal plan and you run out of one of your foods? And she gave me an example of, let's say at breakfast, she was supposed to eat 100 grams of blueberries, and she woke up and she discovered that she only had 50 grams of blueberries. Well, that's a dilemma if we're on a set meal plan, right? And if you're only allowed to eat these set foods, some people might freak out when they see, and I see Julie's tuning in, and I know that Julie knows better. She's just helping me out. I appreciate it, Julie. But what's going on here is that if someone is on a set meal plan and they don't understand macronutrients, if they don't understand calories, if they don't even understand that blueberries are carbohydrates, they might be stuck, right? And really and hopefully if they're working with some kind of a coach, that coach can help them sub in and out foods. I don't do this because I don't do meal plans, but a lot of coaches that do meal plans, they end up giving like food list, which can be very helpful because in that particular situation, they could go to their food list and they could see, all right, what's close, to 100 grams of blueberries, and they could choose one of the foods. And hopefully those food lists are a little bit more detailed where they do have the carbs, the fat, and the protein breakdown. Because like Marie was saying earlier, a lot of these programs, even the ones that are quote-unquote meal plan that have these food lists, they're all based off of macronutrients, which some people just they don't understand that at the end of the day, no matter what food you're eating, it all breaks down to macros. And, whether it's clean food, whether it's healthy food, it all carries calories, it all has macronutrients. And that's where, some people say, oh man, I don't follow macros. Well, you do because you eat food. Let's see what Ben had to say here. And I think Ben actually, I think this question came up later on, but let's see what Ben said. He said, do you find later stages of prep that IIFYM approach and fitting different foods daily can lead to excessive decision fatigue and tendency to overeat? Yes, Ben, that's a great point, and I'll tell you why. So those people who get super duper low on calories during prep, that follow a flexible dieting approach that don't have self-control. Let's start there. So if, for example, someone is under 100 grams of carbohydrates, well, you know what? No, let's make it 75, because even with 100, you can still get away with eating some shit. But let's go 75 grams of carbs. Now, we all know that cereal tends to be pretty dense in carbohydrates, and people, I'm just using myself as an example. I really like cereal, but if my carbohydrates are under 75 grams, which they've never been, I never plan to get there, I would not be eating cereal. But technically, under a IIFYM approach, if you eat cereal and it still fits in your macronutrients, it could work, right? But is that eating responsibly? And I want to pause here for a sec and say that I don't like to use the term IFYM. And I don't even really like to use the term flexible dieting, even though I prefer that one if I had to pick the two. The one that I really like to use is responsible dieting. So a lot of us are adults. I hope so. I hope we act like adults. And if we know, that we are in a contest prep, we know if our calories are low, we know if our carbs are low, that we shouldn't be eating junk food all day long, right? And we have to be responsible in our choices. I shouldn't have to tell my clients that they need to eat vegetables every day, They should already know that, right? If they have their fiber goal, they should be eating some kind of voluminous vegetables. And that just comes with being responsible, right? You have to look at your numbers and say, okay, if my numbers are this, then this is what I'll be able to eat. So in regards to Julie's question, don't freak out if you're on a set meal plan and you run out of a particular food. Do your best, and hopefully you have a fallback plan or at least a food sheet to go off of. Now, Julie said, and I thought this was a really good follow-up question to hers. She said, is there any point in prep where it is beneficial actually to switch over to a set meal plan? And usually, I would be against meal plans, but let's look at it this way. If someone is, let's say, eating, 75 grams of carbohydrates every day, and you're going to find out, because your food's so limited, your calories are so limited, that you're eventually going to be eating the same things, right? You're not going to be eating a ton of different things because you just don't have the options. So even myself right now, I'm eating about 2,900 calories a day, and I roughly eat the same foods every day. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I do, but I have the option to eat different foods. I just choose to eat roughly the same foods right now with my schedule. Over the weekend, maybe some of you guys saw, I did some cooking, that I usually wouldn't do. So I could see, how a meal plan might be helpful at the end of a prep, especially if your numbers are low, and especially if people are having a hard time when it comes to basically avoiding temptation in regards to food selection. Because like I said earlier, if someone gets the idea in their head that, oh man, I'm going to try to fit this in today, that may not necessarily work out for the best. So I do feel like maybe at some point in time, you should either try to eat the same foods or try not to give yourself so much variety at the very end of prep, because it can potentially screw somebody up who just doesn't have the mental fortitude in order to stick to their regimen. Now, there was a couple other questions that came in, and I do want to cover those before we get going, because Julie did ask a lot of questions, and although I love Julie, nobody wants to see 40 minutes of Julie talking here. We want to vary it a little bit. I wonder if she's still on. So, Rebecca said, despite prep, IFYM is more acceptable in real life anyway. Absolutely. Also, she believes that variety is important, and a meal plan creates reliance on a coach, which is fine, but a person should be able to understand the basic caloric intake. And she goes on to say, choosing green beans, strawberries over chicken and cookies and Oreos is you got to eat nutritious stuff. 80 to 85 to 90% nutritious, and fit in some fun stuff. And I definitely agree with that. So I guess I'll pause here again, just kind of give my 2 cents about it. But I do want to cover the cons, obviously, of the flexible dieting approach. And I feel like we got into a little bit of that. But let's talk about what Rebecca was saying. So if someone's on a set meal plan, we've all been there. We all been with our friends and we have to eat out of our Tupperware when we're in contest prep. And it is a little bit socially more acceptable to be like, well, I'm prepping for a show. I have to eat these set foods. Now, on the other hand, she's talking about life. And I don't know about you, but I know about me. I am not prepping all the time. And I would drive myself crazy if I had to eat the same thing for literally years at a time. Now, granted, I eat the staples. I eat chicken. I eat rice. I eat a bunch of vegetables. I eat fruit. Those of you who know me a little bit more personally, maybe follow me on Instagram, know that I eat a lot of cookies. And I'll tell you right now, not a lot of cookies are on people's meal plans. So I definitely take advantage of the flexible dieting approach. But like Rebecca was saying, most of my diet consists of nutritious foods. I'm not eating cookies and cake and candy all day. Do I eat them every day? Without a doubt. Do I eat less of them during contest prep? Yes, because I realize that that's not necessarily responsible of me in order to, be eating those kind of foods during prep. I still eat a couple cookies every day, and I feel like I'm still doing just fine. So, Rebecca, that was a great addition to all of that. Uh-oh, Carl's getting pissed. Carl, for those of you who do not know Carl Frady, Carl does not like the term IFYM. He does not like the term macros. Carl eats, and I will say this, it works for Carl. And Carl is a freak beast, if I would say so myself. And it works for Carl. Carl is more on the side of meal plans, and that's fine because, as we talked about earlier in the video, which I don't know if Carl was on quite when we started, but it has to work for you. If a set meal plan works for you, fantastic. But damn, Carl's getting me today. If flexible dieting puts so much stress on you, having to make these decisions, having to figure out your macros or having to figure out what foods fit your macros, if that puts too much stress and it actually has a negative impact on your ability to stick to the diet, then flexible dieting, if it fits your macros, is just not for you. So there's a medium ground in between. Carl just happens to weigh more to the side of the meal plan aspect. But once again, and I will say this, one final note about Carl, and I know I'm talking a lot about him, but Carl is a very experienced bodybuilder. He's been doing this for a long time, and he knows, and he is responsible enough to not eat junk food. And I know Carl doesn't eat junk food because he eats real food, real shit, and I've heard those are his words, not mine. And he's responsible enough to know what he has to eat and what he shouldn't eat. So that works the best for Carl. Now, I will say this. And Carl, don't get insulted. But, I wonder if he knows where I'm going with this. I feel like flexible dieting, if it fits your macros, is more popular with the millennials, younger people. I feel like the set diet plans are a little bit more ingrained in the older folks. Now, Carl is, he's not an old man. He is not a young spring chicken. He is right in the prime of his life, but he is a little bit, he's telling me to bring it. He's a little bit older, and I think that flexible dieting just didn't become popular when he was coming up within the sport. That wasn't popular then, so that's the methods that Carl has used all the time. And he said I nailed it. Carl, thank you for not getting insulted for calling you semi-old. Anyway, moving on. Carl, I do appreciate you turning in, brother. I see you. We out here. All right, let's I gotta focus a little bit more here, guys. I'm sorry. Carl distracted me. That's what happens when we're together. Back at the Arnold, Caller and I were running the dynamic duo at the Arnold booth. It was great. But let's get back on topic today. Jesus. Let's see here. Ben asked, do I find it... oh, wait. I think I already went to that one. Shit, guys. Shit. All right, let's regroup here. We got this. We got this. We're gonna backtrack a little bit. I'm getting flustered because Carl is screwing with me. But let's go back to Julie's questions. Enough of Carl time. We got to go back to Julie. And she said, we out here. Julie said, are you more likely to develop a food intolerance after contest prep from a meal plan B by default when you're limiting the types of foods? Now, I had to ask Julie what she meant by that, and I thought what she might be referring to is more or less food allergies, just because you eat the same thing for an extended period of time. And my personal take on that is no. I think that's a bunch of BS, personally. Anybody can comment on that as they will. But I've been eating chicken and all that kind of stuff for years at a time, and I'm not allergic to it. But anyway, what I do feel like you can develop, and I think that this is very relevant, but once again, if you're smart enough, it won't happen to you. And I bet you, if Carl's still watching, I bet you Carl does this, is rotating your food. And by that, I mean a nutrient deficiency. So some people who only eat chicken and broccoli and almonds the entirety of their prep, carbs, proteins, fats, whatever, or asparagus, whatever you want to say, they have the potential to develop nutrient deficiencies because they don't swap in and out foods. They only eat one food, and obviously, if you're only eating like 3 or 4 foods, and some people do, you know, because it's convenient, because they like the food, because they don't want to try anything else, you can definitely develop nutrient deficiencies if you're not supplementing properly. Now, Julie also went on to say, as a coach, do I prefer giving my clients macros or meal plans, and why? So I prefer to give my clients macros because I feel like a lot of the people that I work with are a little bit more higher level, and they could choose the foods that they want to eat appropriately. Now, will I help somebody choose said foods? Yes, absolutely. But I feel like it is important for me and for my clients for them to understand the process as well, and not just to blindly follow set foods that I give. And like Rebecca was talking about earlier, is that she actually wants people to understand like the foods that they're eating. Let's see what Carl has to say. And you know what? I might actually bring Carl on here if he really wants to. I don't change in prep, but I eat a variety of whole foods with all the macros and all the calories in growth season. That is very true. Let's see. You know what? And Carl, if you really want to, I could bring you on to this video, pal. I have the capability of doing that. Let me finish a couple questions here, and if you want to come on, you just let me know, man. I'll bring you on. Now, Ben also said, how do we keep track of micronutrients with flexible dieting? So, Ben, that is a great question. With micronutrients, once again, I hope that everyone's being responsible with their food choices. And, you know, hopefully you're eating, some fruits and vegetables here. Hopefully you're rotating your foods. And that's really important. And I feel like, once again, this has to do with age. And I'm going to bring Carl on here. I'm going to bring Carl on in a minute, guys. For those of you who are on Instagram, if you want Carl's feedback, you better go on my Facebook page. If you're not friends with me on Facebook, I don't know why you waited this long for. But anyway, and I lost my train of thought there for a second. Younger guys, yes, I got it back. Younger guys tend to eat shit. They tend to just eat cereal and cookies and donuts to fit their macros because they think it's cool. Older, more responsible, more mature people tend to think that they're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to eat foods that I enjoy, but I'm going to fit in my macros. And let's see if I could bring this on, guys. Come on here. Let's try it. We're doing it. Let's see if I can do it. Stay tuned. It says adding. This is spur of the moment. This is not pre-planned. If it was pre-planned, There he is! Holy shit! Whoa! Let's see if we can hear him. I don't know if I could. There he is. I could hear him. Hopefully everybody else can.
What's up, everybody?
Everybody on Instagram, you better come up to my Facebook page now. This is impromptu. Carl's shopping for groceries.
It's old man Carl Frady here. Ripe old age of 41.
41. I'm just gonna let Carl have the mic because he's been calling it the whole video here.
I
so
just
Carl,
love this because basically, you know, when I was starting out, there was no internet, there was no mass amount of supplementation. It was all whole foods, and I learned at an early age when I started. When I was 16 years old, I've lived in the gym ever since I was 16, and so the number one rule that you always heard was you've got to eat food if you want to grow. It wasn't drink protein shakes, you know. It wasn't eat, protein bars, and it wasn't eating Halo Top with sprinkles. It was eat food. I learned about supplementation, luckily from the right people, and added that aspect as I grew older. But what I personally learned through competition prep, and I've done almost 20 shows. I've had a few different coaches who did. If it fits your macros, and I've had set meal plans. And personally, when I did my own prep, I ate the same thing every day, and I just slowly dwindled my calories down. I didn't measure things out. I just eyeballed a lot of stuff, before I knew what I was really doing, But the biggest thing that I see is that, it's so funny that you mentioned millennials. What's the easiest way to get things done? And,
I'm a millennial.
It's like competition prep is not easy, and competition prep is not for everyone. I turn down the majority of people who want to work with me as a coach because I lay it on so thick that they get scared and they run away. It's like you're not going to see a donut for 5 months. You're not going to see a slice of pizza and ice cream. So my whole thing with food intake, as the calories diminish, that means your micronutrients diminish, So why would I want to add something that is devoid of nutrients to my meal plan when I can eat my oats and my vegetables, my sweet potato, my quinoa, those have micronutrients. So of course we all follow if it fits your macros, and anyone who says they don't, they do. You're following 300 grams of protein a day, 200 grams of carbs, 70, whatever it is. But my big thing is when I'm prepping, it's all about the caloric, the quality of the food, because your training has to be on point. So you're not going to be able to train efficiently off of a nutrient, less nutrients, and you're not going to be able to recover. You've got to have those micronutrients, my personal opinion, So I've seen clients and friends, loved ones who do shows that do the If It Fits Your Macros, and they're literally like pulling their hair out, and they're cussing and, bless my wife. I've seen it, it's like, I've got better things to do than figure out a meal plan every day. If I do a different meal plan or eat a different meal as breakfast, meal one on Tuesday, well, that means I can't do the same thing that I did on Monday. I've got to recalculate everything. I was like, I've got better things to do. I know I'm not the busiest person in the world, and other people have busy jobs, and it's like, so for me, it just makes it easy that Monday through Sunday, I eat the same damn thing. And, so I'm a big fan of the meal plan and personally, when I've given it to clients, they screw it up. Hey, Carl, I've already had my 300 grams of this, and it's only 5 o'clock. Where else do I eat the rest of the day? I was like, so I find it easier as a coach also just to say, hey, here's what you're eating. You paid me to think, you go crush.
Right. Yeah, I agree absolutely. And I think Carl might have cut out there for a sec. I hope that he comes back. But what Carl is saying is that mainly with coaches, you are paying someone to coach you for a specific reason. So like when Carl is saying he wants to give people specific foods for a reason and lay it out on a specific time, that helps them just navigate. Is I actually break down the macronutrients per meal. So although, we lost Carl there, thanks Carl for tuning in. I'll catch you later. What I try to do is I give people macronutrient breakdowns per meal, and I feel like that helps them navigate their way through the day. although I see what Carl is getting at, and we can try to bring him back here if he has a connection. But what we try to do is space the food out accordingly. And Carl's back, but what I'm, oh, Carl, I kind of picked it up where you left off, bearing, what you were talking about as far as like you're hiring a coach to give you a meal plan. You want them to work, but I will let you go ahead and keep running with it. And thanks again for jumping on here with us.
Thank you for allowing me. It's like, I think I pretty much said what I had to say on that. I think, if you're disciplined enough to receive a macro breakdown for the week and you can stick to it, then great. But otherwise, sticking with the meal plan, it just allows you to focus on other things in life, work, relationships, being a husband, being a father, crushing the workout. And at the end of the day, competition prep is not for everybody,
That is very true. And I feel like, and if I can interrupt you just for a sec, I feel like that's just the more mature person in you, once again, because you're at a higher level than most, like people my age, per se, people that are in the millennial category, people that are 25, 26 years old. You understand that you have to be a dad and a husband, and you have to help run a business. Like for a lot of people in a contest prep, their world only revolves around, this little piece of them eating and them going to the gym, and that's all they could physically handle. But obviously, like I'm a newly married man. I have a lot of things to do. Like this weekend, I am going to be coming to Virginia. Actually, I don't know if you knew that, but I'm going to the Core HQ this weekend. It'll be my first time visiting, so that'll be nice.
Oh, nice.
But so what I'm going to do is, I am going to take a certain amount of food with me. So for me, just traveling so much, going across the country, like the flexible approach is a little bit nicer for me. But for someone who, is at, let's say, like a desk job or more or less, and they have access to the same foods all the time, I feel like a meal plan, yes, it can absolutely work. And what Carl will probably agree with too. And I think, guys, we might actually just kind of end the video if Carl doesn't have anything else to say. Even though I did see that Patrick Mabe just joined us. Man, we got the whole. There he is.
This is my
There's
baby.
Patrick.
It's meaty thighs.
So what I think everybody can agree on is that no matter what diet that you choose, it has to be one that you could follow for an extended period of time, especially a contest prep. And I know earlier in the video, Rebecca was talking about, prepping for life, just being able to eat flexibly throughout the course of the week. For us, obviously, we're a little bit higher level when it comes to like competition prep. So I could definitely see where Carl is coming from in regards to a strict meal plan. And Carl, you know what? I'll let you close out this weekly Wednesday video because you are a special impromptu guest. So take it away.
Special guest. I just love it. So obviously that's my opinion when it comes to competition prep, right? So, the even for the person that's just getting started, I'm trying to really educate that individual because the last person you talk about for life. So I want to make sure that I set that person up for success when the competition is done. And if they if they don't really understand the power of food, then we've all seen it where they go into the whole water buffalo phase and they go into the quote unquote the bulking phase and they go up 50, 60 pounds and you got blood pressure problems and you're on your way to heart problems, diabetes, all that kind of stuff. I've been around long enough to see this and there's so many people that are misguided with what goes on after competition prep, but going back to grow season again, I'm all about the even then what's going to help my body to heal, so that's where it goes in. I'd rather eat Ben and Jerry's ice cream, grass-fed cow butter, maple syrup, honey than calorie-free, sugar-free, chemical shitstorm stuff, so that's just me. So but at the same time, again, my own personal opinion is I think a physique looks way better when someone is lean and has whole foods versus someone who's lean and eating a lot of garbage.
Right.
So I think you train better, you recover better,
right?
You
Very
look
true.
Better.
Very true. Yep. I would definitely agree with that as well. And I feel like at least the responsible people in us, once again, as prep continues, and I know I'll do this, I mean, right now I'm not necessarily eating bad foods anyway. I feel like the worst thing that I might eat is like, Greek yogurt with some granola, and maybe I'll put in some chocolate chips in there or something. Like, that's about the worst thing that I would eat right now. Maybe a cookie every now and then. But like, as my prep goes on, I know I'm going to be eating whole foods. And that's like overall, guys. And I think that's where the line gets drawn with IFYM and with set meal plans, is that, they're not these two separate things. They're actually very similar. It's just your individual take on them, and your approach to it. And obviously, we have semi conflicting ideas, I would say. But at the end of the day, Carl and I do agree that you have to eat mostly whole food products in order to get the best result that you're looking for. And I do want to say one other thing. We didn't touch upon it at all. But guys, diet is only a very small portion of the equation. Obviously, proper training and supplementation is going to have just as big of an effect as the food that you're eating as well. So you can't just have your diet nailed down. You have to have all the aspects nailed down. So Carl, thank you once again for coming on very impromptu. This was a great video, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. So Carl, thank you, sir, and I will see you very soon.
All right, dude, that was a lot of fun. Thanks.
All right, have a good night, guys. Bye.
Peace.